are running them in DMV offices to get your license. What process? We will have them running in the DMV offices. State. Also, trying to figure out how to one of the other things that we're cool to be part of the conversation is from PTA meeting. We're giving PowerPoint, so we've already created the resource up on the site. There's a PowerPoint that is a preschool resource. Any adult leader in that for 10-minute awareness session. There we've got flyers, checklists that keep it fun. We've got checklists for pediatricians. So when you go to your well visit, questions of turn your arms in your house safely. Then we have a talking guide. If your kid is going over to spend the night at another kid's house, we've had a conversation with that other parent. Keeping their firearms locked up in their house. Developing additional materials in English up on the website already. For you guys that it's downloading this all our farmers. We're doing additional community. Well, we're also giving material to local people so they can all do. We're doing a national or other events like that, part of like a school or something, we're going to have this messaging available to folks. We're providing on first we bought 25 blocks that we're distributing right now off the state. We also bought 200 gun safes that we're providing local communities at these communities. To get people to come to the events and really excited about the campaign. What's growing up? When we give you just an update, and then we talk about it, where we're interested in community events, like figure out how to teach it, idea on how to do that. One of the things from the department perspective, we are looking at doing a school safety unit again this year. We've had those in pattern. So we're probably looking at the September. So we're looking at cover during that school safety. Obviously, going to be. This came up with this idea here. So we want to make sure on this, on the school safety, on the gun safety information, but also initiatives that we will definitely be highlighting. So there will be additional. You guys have people that you think would be good to have that school safety selling. Love to get that so we can build that agenda. We're starting to look at UNCG again. Also in the last couple of years that we've had this. So just starting to build that ship, we want you all part of that build that agenda. All right, so those are the major topics that are on the department. Get over to Karen Farrell, who is the executive director of the Center for Safety update on where the center.
Okay. So I can see. So good morning. Glad that you are here. Oh, and just wanted to give you an update on what we have done since the last match.
Not working.
I promise it wasn't. I got you.
Okay. All right. That's just for new people don't know our mission and our vision. And the truth is, when Chairman Lassiter was talking, the vision, we just want to make sure that the children are in an environment that is conducive for learning. That, um, that makes them feel like they want to be here and that they can learn. And so, one of the things I want to talk about this morning is school safety legislation. We have our safety grants that we get recurring for the SRO, and it's $33 million currently. But the other part of the safety grant that we get is what we deem as set for the center, and that is for students in crisis services, equipment, and training. And so that asks for recurring money. I don't know if I'll get them, but last year we had 41 million. It looks like this year in the budget, it's 35 million. So if it stays just like it is budget, it'll be about 35 for that part. We'll still have the 33 million for the current SRO. Then our reporting system, it is a renewal. My predecessor, Bo Trumbo, started the part when we did the Say Something Anonymous reporting system in November of 2019. And so, believe it or not, we are coming up on our 5th-year anniversary of that next year. And so, it's now time to do the renewal for the actual contract. And so, in the budget, the state budget, there is money to continue to do that. So we're looking forward to continuing that anonymous reporting system because the multidisciplinary team that is created with something anonymous reporting system will be the foundation as we move to the threat assessment teams that present House Bill 605, which went through the second chamber last night. So I'm excited about that. We went through 3 readings, unopposed issues. So definitely, we will be doing in school in a systematic way. And so that's where we are with regards to that. And so here we have DPI breaks the state up into 8 regions. I talked about this last time. Of course, y'all know that the state is a slow process. But we are looking at applications now for the 4 outer regions, Northwest, Western, Southeast, and Northeast. We already have applications in for those, and we are reviewing them now. We are waiting on the posting for the other 4 regions. These school safety, their main job they will first of all have to live in the region where they apply, and they will cover their individual region. They will be a liaison between school safety directors and the Center for Safer Schools DPI. And the purpose of it is that they will also be there to provide training and technical assistance for their region. And so we will have the 4 in by this fall. Hopefully, the other 4, we'll have the first 4 by the time they start school, and hopefully the other 4 not so long after that. And so we're excited about that. So these are some of our initiatives. A couple of them didn't make the slide, but I'll tell you them anyways. So the first thing is our advisory council. So our superintendent has a PAC, a parent advisory, and her council works with parents on all areas of education. Our parent engagement advisory council will work specifically with safety, food safety. That's all they'll do. Now, she does have committee that's under her PAC, and we will integrate that committee into ours so that we will have total communication. One of the things that we look to make sure is that everybody who is part of the school has a say. And when I took over as the director, one of the things that I asked our superintendent was I wanted to make sure, and she had the idea for her parent advisory council, that I wanted one that was specific to the center, to safety, because what we know is what goes on in the community comes into the school and vice versa. And parents are part of safety. They have a big role in the part of safety. So we will have 24 parent advisory council members with the, going back to the region, we will have three from each. They will be two traditional and one charter. And the reason that's the way we'll have it is by legislation when it talks about me supplying funding for grant funding and all, I supply it to traditional or public and the charters to traditional. So that's where this advisory council will be. Um, and we will also address issue that is dear to the superintendent's heart. She's asked me to work on it, and that is as it relates to grooming, because we are seeing that we're having certain times areas as respect to grooming children by adult um, personnel, school personnel. And you see it in the news. So it's not something that is a secret. We are seeing a little more often than we want. And so definitely that is something that we need to address. And so we really want part of our parent advisory council to help us with that. Because again, these are their children, and so they know. And so what we want the end goal for the parent engagement advisory council to be is to be able to help other parents in their region with issues that to navigate how to understand the discipline in the school system, understand the process that you go through when your child has been disciplined. If you have a grievance, how to file effectively, those kind of things, so that everybody is working together and on the same page. Also, we have started a student engagement unit in the center. The SAVE Club is part of the anonymous reporting system that comes with the Say Something Anonymous reporting system. And so SAVE clubs originated in Charlotte. And then when Sandy Hook Promise Foundation um, went in to start theirs, they partnered with whoever they got it from, and they kind of took it under them. And so, in order to have the anonymous system in your district, you have to have a SAVE club. And as last count, I think we have 103 or 105 districts out of 115 that are part of the reporting system. And we have a little over 200 LEA. Charters. And so the other two student engagement initiatives, Shine Receive, and these are from federal funds. The Shine and Seed do the same thing. Shine is for middle schoolers, Seed is for high schoolers. And so what it does is we are doing a pilot now. We're up, and I am going to have to leave early because we're doing the kickoff today. It's in Person County today and Vance County, I think, tomorrow. And so what it is it's the opportunity to work with children who may in fact have had some challenges so that we can understand and help guide them to making better decisions. So this is a pilot that again came from federal dollars. We're excited about starting it. And our goal is once we get some data, be able to secure additional funding and move it across the state. Our EKG2 program, I know that you may be familiar with that came out of Fayetteville. Lisa Day, who was the creator of EKG in Fayetteville, came to the center, worked with us a little while, gave us the EKG2 with Michelle Garino and the North Carolina Game Investigators Association and ISP Game 101. And so we are looking to expand that. Now, we did have a piece of legislation. um, Chairman Lassiter said we have been working on had a piece of legislation. I don't think that it's going to be successful this year, but if you know me, I have a plan B. And so plan B is that we are still going to do it in seventh grade. It was the intent, the legislation was going to give it seventh and ninth grade. But unfortunately, like I said, I going to come to fruition. And if that be the case, we are still going to move forward in seventh grade training. And so we will talk about that shortly. The other thing that is not up here is my multidisciplinary team. So it is very apparent to me. I have been doing school tours since the last time. I don't know if I had started in 1 week. So I've been doing school tours. I've been going to schools, talking with them about their safety concerns, talking with them about what they would like to see, what they feel their challenges is. And North Carolina is a beautiful state. And from the mountains to the coast, challenges are different. And so we talked about it last year. We're kind of waiting to see what legislation has because we are moving forward on our threat assessment development. We are starting the multidisciplinary team where we are pulling people from each of those regions and different disciplines to help us to address the concerns that they have about safety in their respective regions. And so we are looking forward to that. I already talked about the school safety grant. So the Say Something Anonymous reporting system, where I talked about the basis of that multidisciplinary is what we were going to use as we transition to building threat assessment teams. These are the top 5 tips that we have since August 1st through last Friday. And as we see, bullying, cyberbullying has been number one since I can remember. It is definitely an issue. And so when we get that parent advisory group up, that is one of their initiatives. How do we address that, right? Because definitely the center has secured 3 interns summer. And one of the interns I have working specifically on developing an outline where we can present to the parents as it relates to bullying. But looking at the bullying from the perspective of the child that's being bullied, the child that's bullied, the parent of the child that's being bullied, and the perspective of the parent of the child that is doing the bullying. So we definitely want to be able to be that resource that the center is and provide some if you will, steps or best practices in how to handle children who are the bully or being bullied. So that is of a great concern, and that is one of our strong initiatives. And then as you see the other, we have since November 2019 have had over 24,000 tips as it relates to the anonymous reporting. Back in the fall, we added another category, and that was the category was inappropriate behavior with school personnel. And that leads back to what I was talking about earlier in the grooming. And so we added that category to the anonymous reporting. I think sometime in September and October, we have received tips as it relates to that. I'm not going to steal the thunder, but we are excited about working with both Trumbull Emergency Management and WAVE. We are looking forward to having them talk to our school. We had them talk to our safety directors already. We have a safety director meeting. And so we're looking forward to helping that get through and expanding our school system. We have our back to school safety conference in July. I told y'all about that last. So the task force will get, we kind of are now at the point where we know what everything is going to be. So you will be getting an invitation. If you are in that way, you can come down. We do have a over the training center. It is still in progress. So we will do what we've been doing with RISE, and that's just kind of taking it on the road until such a stable place. And so this year it's going to be in Gastonia at the Gastonia Conference Center. So we like to go west to east, north to south, so that we can get as many people from that area. Especially when you talk about west, when you're talking about Macon and Haywood, that's pretty far. We are adding something different this time. If you've ever been to a RISE Back to School Safety Conference, we're adding the SRO LEO track, and the LEO track is our beta training. And so we have, I think it's, can't think of the name of the company, but they're going to come out of DC, and they use a secret service model, and they are going to conduct an in-person beta training. They have been doing it for like a year and a half now, virtually, and I think we have over 1,000 school personnel that have been trained. But we want to continue that, and we thought it was a good idea to bring them to do it in person. So that will be strictly for law enforcement officers, because what we were finding out, enforcement officers, they weren't able to come when we were doing it during the school because they needed to be on campus. And so now this way, we decided that we'll do it in the summer before school, so that allow the LEOs to be able to come. And then EKG2, part of the plan, we are going to do training, and those will kick it off there at the RISE. And my plan, my not getting the funding to be able to do it, is to train as many trainers, our 8 school safety specialists, and then move out to do even more. And so we'll have a class there at RISE, and we're hoping that we can get as many SROs to come and do that so that they can take it back and facilitate it at their school. We're also doing the assist training this year. We are finding that suicide and suicide ideations are up. And so we have someone who is nationally certified who is coming to do a 2-day training to help our administrators. So RISE is for teachers, administrators, support personnel. Anyone who works in the school is welcome to come to RISE, and of course the task. We just completed 10 years of the center being in existence in March, and we decided to do a 10-month of event. And I guess we've got about 7 more months, and that's just that. And this month in June, we're doing choices, the film screening that goes with the EKG2 program, and it is a 28, 29-minute movie that allows children to see how to make better choices when they are faced with the possibility of being included in violence. And so we're really excited about getting that out. As Billy said, we've done 12 pilots for each of the 3 U.S. Attorney's Office 4. And so we're looking to keep going. We'll go until the funding runs out. So the calendar, we have a training center sort of calendar. We have a training center in Bisco. They're renovating it. Samarkand, is if you will, they hold the keys to making sure that the structure is ready for us. So the building, the maintenance, the grounds, the infrastructure. And then the Center for Safer Schools, provides those trainings. And it will be open to anyone in North Carolina who wants to conduct trainings, not just the center. But as former Representative Bowles said, the center is just the premier, right? So we will send out a calendar of events for those trainings at RISE. Some of the trainings that will be included at the center right here at Samarkand, they have been so gracious as to allow us to have classrooms. We still will need to do other arrangements for different types of training. But we will be doing, of course, critical incident, and this is in the fall when we start critical incident, the shooter training, reunification. We will be conducting mental health training, youth, adults, and teens for their definitely the EKG2. That's how we're going to get it out to the district. We're going to ask people to send your staff to the training center, and we'll train as many trainers as possible. I already talked about the systems and the beta, and also we are in the process of developing the curriculum as it relates to the best utilization of SR by ministry. And so that is one of the things that is on our table right now to look at. We want SROs to be looked at as in a favorable light as more mentoring than policing, but we understand that they have that role too. And so what we want to do is to ensure that administrators understand the value of what they have in the SROs and that they can utilize it to make a positive environment, and for SROs to build those relationships with children. Part of the Say Something Anonymous reporting system is that you find a trusted adult. Unfortunately, some of our children who are in school at home. And so they sometimes wait for school so that they can have that trusted adult that they can interact with. We want one of those trusted adults to be the SRO, because we know that educators already have a lot, and the SRO is there. He or she knows two things: they know what's happening in the school, but they also know what's happening in the community because they're law enforcement. And so we think that is a great use of knowledge and moving forward. So we really want to focus on that. Last thing I'm going to say about the threat assessment, I do want to get back to that for a second. The threat assessment, what we know is schools are doing threat assessments. They were already doing threat assessments before we worked through the legislation. And I cannot say enough about how Representative Corbett has been an ally and a friend to the Center for Safer Schools. I was telling Dr. Ellis a few minutes ago, I don't think that we haven't gotten something that we needed to move forward. And so what we understood is that threat assessments were being conducted anyway. This legislation just helps it be done in a systematic way. And it also allows for them reporting so that we make sure that children are being part of a threat assessment in a way that is not discriminatory. So I'm really excited about that. I think that the threat assessment model is going to help identify needs of children before they become a danger to themselves and or others. And again, going back to my vision, our whole goal is to make sure that children are in school and that they're learning in an environment that is so that is it, I think. Yeah. Well, we got?
Contact you.
Yeah, contact me, not really, Johnny K. Uh, yeah, there you go, contact info. But is there any questions as it relates to what I said? All right, I think I've done it. There you go. Here, and I do want, I'm not doing, we have to do.
I'll open it up just real quick again, any questions for Terry? I know tax is new, so, yeah, yeah. Mental health. Widespread. Widespread.
It's got, it's large district.
I can't hear.
People within their district. Right?
It could be.
But what we're finding is that rule, outlining this, especially when if my school system has the money and asking you to do it. So I would ask Dr. Ellis, I think it's pretty good, I mean, pretty commonplace because a couple of years ago, it came and it took off, they gave free money and that kind of thing. So I think it's something that a lot of the districts, larger districts, but I don't know. So,
And it is hard now that every single test you have to have. And so they have stuff that if they have, what do they call kids? And mental health first aid, just about every district is trying to or should have it in place. But most of the places where they're offering that, so and then mental health first aid,
Yeah.
and Karen and I work some with that, implementing one of the, that's why mental health first aid for staff, mental health first aid students. We're really trying to make that across the board, commercial,
and also we, the center, wanted to student adult mental health care. One of the things we came back from the pandemic, finding children as they should be, but the teachers and parents who were in the house, and we also have, we do all the adults, youth, and so
Monday. Resource officer. Guidance council. Well, she stepped out of the home. Resource officer was at, when he walked up to the front, there was three emergency people there, three dead. Felt bad because no one had told him about this thing. Her response was that I felt I had it under control. She never was told to punish. The minute the principal called, assistant, they automatically would, sheriff department. And then the sheriff department, had they known he was there, he could have started taking over control. He said it didn't mean that he was going to get involved. That student had decided, he needed to have been there. So absolutely never heard office. So I like what you're doing. So there needs to be a process. You can just not leave someone out because people have that harm for someone else. The FBI would be calling him saying, why didn't you intervene? When he didn't know, so about that time, the school board member walked in. The resource officer walked up and he said, what's going on? Felt bad because it looked like he didn't do his job with no one.
yeah,
That just happened.
yeah. We definitely just want to make. That's our role. So identify what they should not do and we utilize it for how they do.
Any other questions for Terry? They want to introduce, Vic, he got in here. So, I've been told by our IT folks we have to take. Be open to our people that are online. It's 5 minutes, and we'll, if you're coming right up to the window.
Yes, yes, good to speak to all of you. I hadn't stressed out. Okay, where we work with you guys. He's the agent board. Yeah, I worked with her, enjoyed working with her. Yeah, and Dr. Jones too.
Yeah. So did you move out this way? See it over there?
Oh, yes, yes, look, now we're famous, everybody knows the casino. I know. You need to dance in Vegas.
That's great.
Yeah. I was looking at the, I had to email him too and introduce myself. Okay. Yes, and have people get into it. I totally, it's really good. Increase the safety for you guys and each other.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It might miss me. We're good, but you still have to.
Okay, so before we move to Elizabeth, I'm going to have Aaron real quickly in your packet. There's on the left-hand side, there's a reimbursement form. So if you're traveling here today, she can talk you through how to do the reimbursement for that real quick.
Yeah, Slickly said your mileage here today is reimbursable. There is a form in there, I'm sure that, like with every new form, there's a lot of boxes. The most important things you can get me are your address that you're tracking out to and your actual mileage. If you have any questions, email me, call, you can scan me a copy, I can take a photograph, or you can complete it while you're here today. I will be around.
It looks like this if you haven't seen it, this green and white form. So I know several of y'all have to drive from a pretty good distance, so feel free to fill in the form and we'll get you reimbursed. So next up, we'll have Elizabeth Musto, who will talk to us about the school safety action plan.
No, I just have a couple really quick updates. So we're working on the most recent quarterly school safety report. So we should have that to you within the next week. Also, probably within the next month, we'll be reaching out. We're going to be doing some revisions to the action plan itself this summer. So we'll be reaching out to all of you for some feedback on that. And then the only other thing I had, looks like he just stepped out. We have a new team member, Dawson Spencer. He's actually going to be taking over managing the action plan. So you'll probably see emails coming from him this summer.
Any questions for Elizabeth? I know, and several people have asked me, we have subcommittees that work on each of the action goals. We're going to try to reestablish those. During the pandemic, we got kind of with all the virtual, it was difficult to get those subcommittees up and going and running correctly. So we'll get an email out to you that talks about the subcommittees and the different objectives. And if there's one that you're particularly interested in, then let us know, and we'll make sure that you're can work on that action goal. And we'll get you a copy of the action plan if you haven't seen it before. We'll make sure that you get a copy of it. Our goal is to try to get it updated in the next year with any new goals and objectives that we have. A lot of the things that Karen talked about today came out of the action plan, and lots of the additional steps that we're taking, everything from threat assessment to EKG to looking at the Say Something app. So all of those things are covered in there, and we'll get you a copy of it. And if there are particular committees you want to be on, let us know. So next up, we want to talk about threat assessment a little bit from the state perspective. And before I introduce the SBI folks that are here, I'm going to just give you a little bit of data that I wanted to share with you to kind of show you what we're talking about as far as school threats. So this has been an issue that many legislative members have called me about, and I'm sure Karen's probably gotten similar types of calls to just try to figure out what we want to do about school threats. But just wanted to highlight some of the numbers that we're seeing as far as school threats and why the threat assessment legislation that Karen just talked about is so important. These are actual school-related complaints data that I'm giving you now. So you can kind of see, and that means that an actual law enforcement action was taken on a child because the threat was being made on a school campus. And so I just wanted to highlight these to you because I think the data that you're going to see from the data unit also is very similar. But in the smaller sheet that you've got shows you a line graph of the data as far as the number of school threats offenses by fiscal year. And so you can see so far this fiscal year, meaning the same thing as a school year, we've had 1,145 school threats that have been made on school campuses. And that includes everything from small threats, which are, I'm going to beat y'all up, to major threats. And those major threats would include things like threats of mass violence on a school campus. And so just to break that down for you, so you can kind of get an idea of what we're talking about as far as the numbers of the school threats that came in, 64% were for the communicating threats, the misdemeanor variety. So that's over half of them are for the misdemeanor variety, but 11% were for communicating threats of mass violence on educational property. That is a Class H felony. when that threat is made on a school campus. So 11% of that 1,100 threats that are coming in, you're talking about 120 threats across the state last year that were made of mass violence where a juvenile ended up being charged with it. That doesn't mean that there weren't other ones that were that occurred. We're getting a lot of these cyber ones that are coming in from outside of the country even that are we're trying to figure out resources and ways to track down those where those are coming from and how we can stop those from coming in. But these are actual real threats where someone got charged of mass violence. And the last one is making a false report concerning mass violence on educational property, which is also a Class H felony. And that was 25% of all the threats that came in as far as those numbers. So this shows you by fiscal year what we're seeing. And obviously the big dip in the middle was what? COVID, right? Nobody was in school, so there weren't any threats on school campuses. I'm not quite sure how we even got 205, but we did, and that's probably ones that were made virtually that came in. But we have definitely, even if you go back pre-pandemic, we were around the 830, 840 range, and last year we had almost 1,100 of these. So we were seeing an uptick in the number of threats that are being made on school campuses, and that's why this threat assessment legislation is so vitally important, so that we can have the conversation about how do we handle that in a systemic way. A long chart I just wanted to provide you because it kind of designates some of the major events that happen and kind of what we saw as far as trends. So the big uptick at the very beginning of that chart is Parkland, right? And so right after these major school violence incidents, what we see is a huge uptick in threats that are made on school campuses, or either copycat threats, but still terrorize the school, right? They create the same problems with the environment on the school campus because kids are already on edge, parents are already on edge, staff are already on edge, and these threats come in and we have to go to lockdown. And obviously it's a disconcerting situation. So one of the things that we've been asked to look at, and we want to get your input on over the next year on the task force here, is what else can we do as far as threats being made on campus? Is there something else that we need to look at as far as legislative changes or programming changes that could help with, one, to deter the false ones that are coming in, but also to identify kids earlier before they would be at a point where they feel like they need to make such a threat. And so wanted to provide this data to you to kind of as a backdrop to the next presentation that we're going to have, which is Mr. Sam Earl from the State Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent in Charge. And if you'll come up and give us an overview of the beta unit, which is an innovative idea that I think it started in a couple other states, and we've brought it here to North Carolina. He's going to tell you a little bit about it and how it's been functioning in the state of North Carolina right now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everybody, and I appreciate the opportunity to get in front and speak about beta and about the work that we do. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Earl Sam. I've been in law enforcement for about 18 years, and in that time, I've been able to work like patrol. I've been able to work major crimes. I've been able to work drug cases, and so I've been working threat assessment cases now for a little over 5 years. And what I really like about working these cases, it's an opportunity for me and my team to really intervene in a positive way for our subjects of concern, including many juveniles, of course. And we'll look at the stats a little bit later. But I'll talk to you a little bit about our unit, kind of how we work, how we operate. And, it's a small enough setting. If you have questions, feel free to interrupt and ask me. I think we can have a little conversation if you'd like to get any questions. But so this is just kind of the goal of our unit is a proactive approach to prevent violence in communities. And what I like about this setting that we have right here is we have law enforcement, we have schools here, because when we think about targeted violence, it's a community problem. It's not just a law enforcement problem. So we need to have everybody involved to do what their little piece to try to prevent violence and try to support our subjects and our students of concern. And this is the pathway to targeted violence. This is kind of the operational framework that guides how we work through our cases. So when we look at this pathway, subjects that go on to commit targeted acts of violence, they move up and down this pathway. And as they're doing so, they are displaying behaviors that indicate that they are on this pathway, which we refer to those as warning behaviors. So one of those being leakage, right? They talk about it. They talk about wanting to do some sort of attack, or they directly threaten or tell the person they're going to do. And they move up and down this pathway. If it gets reported to a threat assessment team or to law enforcement, we can kind of work through our process to try to uncover those warning behaviors, but also risk factors. Risk factors are something that everybody has, right? Suicidality is a risk factor that we see a lot of in these cases, and alcohol, drug use, financial issues, school challenges. These are all challenges that our subjects of concern are dealing with, that when we uncover that they're dealing with these issues, that helps guide our management and mitigation to try to help alleviate those issues that they're dealing with. For students, it's a lot of school problems, right? Oftentimes we see challenges with peer interactions. So we're going to look for ways that we can support them in smaller settings to develop their social skills so they don't have those challenging interactions in schools. Another risk factor that we see, and Karen talked about this earlier, is weapons and weapons access. That's a very easy one, especially for juveniles, because they can't go and buy one legally. That's a very easy one where our teams need to be addressing to make sure that weapons are secured in the homes. And I like that program that Karen talked about. But as we're working through our cases and we're looking for these risk factors and we're looking for these warning behaviors, we're going to manage and mitigate along the way and give recommendations that could make sense to help sort of off-ramp or to minimize any risk of violence. So in a very simple way to look at it, that's the goal of our investigation, is what risk factors do we find that we can help reduce, and what protective factors can we find that we can help boost. In many ways, we learn oftentimes that there is a person that has a positive role in this student's life, but they don't know it. They don't know that they've made a positive impact. But if we can communicate that to them and they can engage more to support them, then that's even better. We're talking about SROs. SROs are a great resource in our schools to be a positive support for these students that are kind of displaying some concerning behaviors. And this is the team that we have currently. So, the Director Schermeyer, after Parkland happened in 2018, he asked and he said, what can the SBI do to assist with this problem? Of course, we are a state agency. We're not going to be the first ones that can be a rapid responder. We can't put an SBI agent in all the schools. So where can we fit? And we came across this idea of threat assessment. Worked a lot with the Secret Service, FBI's BAU, other federal agencies that are doing threat assessment to develop our team and guide our team to say, hey, this is a piece that we can do to help. We can go in, we can do, before this happens, we can do an investigation to try to support our students that are displaying concerning behavior. So under the director, we have assistant director and the general counsel. The general counsel sits on our team at Tuesday meetings every week. The special agent in charge, the ASAC, is the assistant special agent in charge. That's me. Currently, we have 6 agents across the state. SW, that's our social worker. We added her to the team earlier this year. And we have 2 psychologists that work on the team. What I really, really like about our multidisciplinary team is that through our own individual training and experiences, we've learned to problem solve in different ways. So through law enforcement, I've learned, arrest. I've learned IPC. And that's about it, right? So somewhat limited. And that's not always the goal. We don't want to arrest these subjects, these students, if we don't have to. We want to try to support them in other ways. Similarly, our social worker, she's got her own strategies. So, and the psychologist as well from the mental health side of the house. So when we're meeting together in our meetings and we're talking about these strategies, we're all sharing the strategies that we've learned through our experience. And we're deciding which one is going to best support that subject of concern. I often refer to our investigations as being subject-centric. That's because we're constantly thinking about what our investigative strategy, how is that going to impact our student? Is it going to impact them negatively, and if the risk of that outweighs the potential information we'll gain, and that's an investigative strategy that we will not use. Again, we want to support our students through these challenging times that they're going through. And similar to Center for Safer Schools, I'm sure we have some nuanced differences here, but this is our district map, and it's sort of how we break down our responsibilities for our agents. Sat Kelly Hodges is my supervisor, my direct report, and she's over the unit. That is me. And you all have your packets here, so please connect with your agent. I think that the more that we connect on the front end, we have that professional working relationship, the easier it is to make sure that all these cases that need to be addressed are being looked at in an appropriate way. Agent Chris Campbell is out west. Northwestern District is currently vacant. Agent Caitlin Hall is out in the Charlotte area. Agent Nicole Ward, she is in the Greensboro area. Agent Jake Kornicki, he is in the Raleigh area. And Agent Reed Benson and K9 Porter are Fayetteville District. And the Northeast District, we have Agent Tony Lamantusa. And then our Coastal District is currently vacant. Statewide, as part of our team, is our General Counsel, Angel Gray. And again, she sits in all of our Tuesday meetings. And again, she leans on her expertise in the legal field to make sure what we're doing is appropriate and answer any sort of legal questions that we have. Dr. Nicole Jones is the lead psychologist on the team. And Dr. Margot Williams is a psychologist on the team as well. And Courtney Fisher is the social worker on our team. We're currently in the process of adding a Intel analyst, and they're massive help for us for social media analysis, looking at things like that. But anytime we get a case, we build that investigative team, which includes our local law enforcement partner, the agent, a psychologist will be assigned, a social worker, and an analyst. So that team is very familiar with the case, and they're all talking about their ideas for investigative strategies that might get the information we're expecting.
How does the case rise to your level where this team will become involved?
So if there is a concern for targeted violence, and a lot of times that is the warning behaviors. You know, it's hard to say. I know us being a state agency, you may think that it may need to reach a certain threshold. It's hard to say what cases are more concerning than others, right? A lot of times you have, and we'll talk about some trends, but social media posts, you know, threatening to shoot up school, if we can identify that person, that's a subject, that's a student concern, right? And that would be something that we would work. So we're really looking for that indicator that this individual is on the path to targeted violence that I showed you earlier. If there are indicators there, then it's an appropriate case for us to work.
So your team is actively looking for these things.
So the SBI is an assisting agency in most cases. So we operate upon request from a local law enforcement agency. And so like that's where the SROs, we work a lot of cases with SROs. So if they're active within your schools, they could be a person that could request the SBI beta team directly to assist with the case. Thank you for that question. Any other questions right now?
I was just looking at the makeup of the team, and I was wondering, I know at the school level, school counselors are involved and administration when the threats are done. And I was just, wondering about the makeup of the team in terms of, the input from school counseling and administration.
Yes. So any cases that we work that we will go and reach out to the schools. Dr. Ellis, we worked a lot with cases out in Rockingham County before. We love it because they are great sources of information. I think one challenge that we have is there is a we need to sort of demystify what our role is, because we come in as the SBI and we're like, well, I'm a little concerned about talking to them. That's why I always let everybody know anytime I present that we are student-centric, we are subject-centric. We want to support our students, we want to support our subjects. So yes, we come out to the schools as a part of our investigation. I really like our school interviews because they know a lot of information, and it's also low risk of negatively impacting the student. Because we can talk to the social worker, they're not going to tell the rest of the school what's happening with the student. And so that's why I like our social workers, our counselors, and our teachers standard in schools, and we're going to go try to do those intervals. Thank you. Yes.
This is a second makeup of the team question. A significant percentage of our students statewide are children of color, and the team doesn't seem to have that same percentage, if you will, or rough ratio of the percentage of students we have of color in our system. Can you comment on that?
So our team is small. As we expand, because we have 10 full-time members. As we expand, hopefully, and add more agents, and that is something that we would like to address and they could address. But thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Me too. Any other questions?
Not a question, but a comment, because I was thinking the same thing, but I was going to wait till the end of the presentation to see if you got to it. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Because we know students of color, students with disabilities are more likely to be looked at as perpetuating violence versus being victims of violence themselves. Sometimes, Karen, to your point about streamlining threat assessments, it gives us the opportunity to have structured reporting and be able to look for those disparities. I'm wondering how your team also kind of looks at these cases. You said, you're student-centric and subject-centric through that lens of not only making sure that the folks who are looking at are diversified, but that they're well-versed in the different needs and presentations of all students, and so that we're not getting students of color and with disabilities disproportionately perceived as those that would be perpetrating violence versus those that might need some additional type of supports.
Yes. So when we look at a case, we look at it thoughtfully, and we look, is this something that is driven by a grievance and driven by somebody that may be on the pathway, or is it driven by something that's behavioral or a challenge that the student may have? I will say in terms of, we don't track specifically race or anything like that, but more so, I've been on the unit for 5 years, and sort of anecdotally, I have not seen any sort of trend in terms of minority students being at a greater rate than, or a higher rate than any other majority students.
I think that would be an important data trend to track so that we have it, so we know how many are referred or that you all take notice of and you're involved with, as well as, what are those outcomes? What do they look like?
And one of the things, as of course, the legislation went through both chambers, but now it has to go back to, sort of back to the House where it originated. But one of the things that we're definitely going to look at is asking the district how many are referred to the SBI. So that is going to be something that DBI is going to try.
Any other questions? So looking at case statistics, again, we started around late November. This is kind of a case breakdown per district. And this is sort of representative of sort of where we had an agent engaging with our schools and with our local law enforcement. See, we've got a lot in the Charlotte area. We've got a lot of good engagement from the schools there, and then a lot in the capital and Greensboro area. This is a look at our beta cases by year. Of course, 2018 was a very short year when we just started. 2019, we had 60 cases. And 2020 and 2021, a little bit lower on our case count. And as we had mentioned earlier, a lot of that's due to COVID. Schools were not in. And so I think it's kind of twofold from that perspective. Schools were not in that school is a challenge for some of our students and is one of their biggest challenges. So they weren't in that setting. But then they also were not, we didn't have students in a setting where an adult was observing these behaviors to report. So I think those 2 years we had lower numbers. 2022, we had 73 cases. And in 2023, so far, we've had 54. Looking at that current rate, if we continue that for the rest of the year, we'd be looking at 61 more cases for the rest of the year. And generally, about 50% of our cases are related to juveniles in schools. So I have about half juvenile, half adults. And sort of the only significant trend is largely about 90% of beta cases are male. One of the things is that as we're working through our sort of process over the 5 years, we're growing and we're trying to improve. We want to update our workflow, and we've updated it to try to better service our requesters. But this is kind of in a quick time frame. We're looking at 7-week process that we're going to go through this beta process to uncover those risk factors, those warning behaviors, and to deliver a management mitigation plan to help minimize risk for violence. So kind of before a request comes in, if there's a local team, a school threat assessment team, or a law enforcement agency that's examining that catalyst event, try to understand the reasoning for that concerning behavior. What's the direction of interest? Is there imminence? Is there weapons access? And then any risk factors and warning behaviors that they're aware of beforehand. And additional information that helps us and the request is parent and guardian information to understand kind of their network for that student. Upon request, that starts our triage phase. And again, this is where we're looking at the catalyst event and trying to understand it, try to understand kind of the reasoning behind it. We may do a student interview, we may do collaborative interviews. As I told you earlier, we really like doing our school interviews. And then we're making that investigation team. And schools can participate in this process as well. So we have, after 1 week, we'll have a triage meeting. And that's where we're discussing this. And again, our schools, if they want to participate in these calls, they can participate and to share the insight that they have. Also to share what management mitigation strategies would be of value to support this student. At the triage meeting, we present the information that we've uncovered in that first week. And, sometimes we may have a different take and understand that concerning behavior differently, and it may not be an appropriate case to continue. And so, or the subject may leave that jurisdiction. If we do see those concerning behaviors or we have questions we want to continue to explore, we will continue the case, and it begins a 3-week beta investigation overview phase. And during that 3-week process, this is kind of the triage form that we go over. During that investigation process, we're doing more interviews. We're getting releases for records if we have parents that are cooperating with the investigation. And the goal is to continue to uncover risk and protect factors and warning behaviors. Social media and all this kind of guides what we do for our bio meeting. We review and score the form that we have, and this form has risk factors and warning behaviors that we're looking for, and we note which ones were found during the investigation, note as positive or negative, and that helps guide our management mitigation. Found that risk factor being present, then we'll know we need to try to find a resource to try to minimize that or eliminate that risk factor. If our investigation is complete, we begin the threat assessment writing phase. And if it's not, sometimes we have records that we're waiting on, or we have other pieces of information that could be of value. We'll continue the case. And this is sort of an example of our bio form, and there's 25 of these that we take a look at to try to uncover. During the writing phase, it's developed by the agent and the psychologist and social worker on the team. And our social worker has been a great addition to our team. She'll explore specific resources and say, this specific resource is accessible and affordable to this student and student's family. So that will work. She's been a great resource in terms of those pieces. We set the meeting with our investigation team to discuss and the management mitigation. And then we deliver it to our local partners. Again, schools are a part of this as well. So if our schools can be on that call, that's great because, you all in the school settings are seeing these students during the school year much more often, sometimes in their families. So we will follow up in 3 months to see if there's any additional assistance needed, and also help guide our kind of process to see if we're working in the most efficient way possible. Sort of the trends that, you know, we've seen in school is social media, a lot of social media threats. Sometimes they are anonymous, but the cases we have, sometimes they've been able to identify through certain investigative tactics. Threats, we've seen threats as kind of a trend in school, and also inappropriate comments. Sometimes those threats can be sort of a response, an angry response from a student, and they say something out of anger, and of course we consider the context of how they made that threat as well. Inappropriate comments, we're seeing these kind of happen as well. It just kind of makes people uncomfortable, so we would look into that, try to understand better what it meant to the subject for the student. Look at some future updates. So we have developed a 3-day training that we put on. It's sort of law enforcement focused because we talk a lot about how we conduct these interviews, how we conduct these investigations. But we are also been working on developing a 1-day training that's schools focused. So it'll be more focused on observing and identifying those concerning behaviors and sort of documenting. Sigma and ONTIC, we've been doing the online training with Center for Safer Schools, so we've assisted in that. And for collaboration, you know, we'll continue to collaborate with Center for Safer Schools, but always looking for ways that we can better collaborate with schools. Any questions? What questions?
I can just say through personal experience working with you all, we have reached out to them in a case that was really high level for us. We have a multidisciplinary process, and it was a really intense situation. And what was so great about it was our multidisciplinary team met with your multidisciplinary team, and this individual really needed some mental health services, and the family was really resistant to that. And so just through our efforts collaborating together, I think we were able to really get that individual, you know, they had some interventions in place, and it just, the whole situation completely de-escalated because we were able to really mitigate that through putting in resources. And, you know, there's just such, it took a lot of work, though, a lot of work between both agencies, I think, working through that. So it was really helpful.
I guess maybe for you, Dr. Ellis, you know, since you've had that experience, you described it kind of being like a 7-week process. So, you know, if I know issues are different, urgent, emergent, so forth. Kind of what's happening on the ground while this process, I'm thinking if a student is making a threat in the classroom towards a teacher or another student, there are things that obviously are happening immediately while your process is already working at the same time. So can you kind of explain, maybe from both your perspective, what that looks like?
Yeah, you go first if you want to.
Sure. So, you know, we don't offer guidance. Sometimes schools will say, hey, was this person safe? Can we let them back in the school? We don't offer any guidance on that end. We recommend that schools follow whatever protocols they do. So that could be a suspension, you know, sometimes it's expulsion. Other cases, we might have an IVC going on during that process. So we let the other community agencies involved follow their processes, and we sort of work around it.
And I can just say from our perspective, I think it's been something I've learned because we've had several cases together. Their process, from my experience, and I don't want to say anything wrong, but it is not a situation where you're focusing on just a law enforcement perspective, which I really appreciated, because the bottom line is this person that is a person of concern, right? There's a lot of factors that have gone into why they're where they are, right? And so we've got to look at it from like a whole person, you know, approach. And I felt like that's really what it was, you know, it really was that. But I would also say that just speaks to even more like this current House bill legislation and Senate bill that just went through 605, where it's so important for schools to have a process, because in all reality, just excluding a kid from school can increase a risk, right? And so we have to know that just placing them outside of the gate and not offering any resources can escalate a situation even more. And so that's where schools have to have that process in place themselves and look at building a full continuum of supports, you know. And so through that, I think, but it is hard, right? It is hard because there are situations, in my situation that we had with this particular student, the family refused mental health services. The kid was severely depressed. And when you experience depression for so long without treatment, you begin, instead of acting out internally, sometimes it goes out externally. And that's what was getting ready to happen with this individual. And so there was a lot, we worked so hard on that relationship, but they were just so closed, to getting resources and support and help. And so through that, that's where we were like, okay, we have to get some other support. Now, they couldn't force them to go to mental health services either, right? But what it did help was it helped us really bring in, we had our law enforcement, the local law enforcement was there, SBI was there, our district was there, in addition to social services needed to be there. And so we all worked together as a unit to really kind of help this family get to a place. And I mean, it went on for a year. I mean, it was a lot, it's still going on, but it's to get them to the place where they needed to be. It took a long time, So I think that's the good part about it to me, is really that collaboration and working together. And that's where you really do save lives.
And while all that happened, sorry to interrupt you. Is
okay.
the student involved in any of that? 'Cause I get obviously some of that are professionals and adults, but is the student involved in any of that where they actually know, hey, all these people are here working on my behalf?
Absolutely, they do. Now, of course, at first you don't necessarily bring them in with the room because that's scary. That'd be scary for any of us to think, oh my gosh. But absolutely, I think, involving that student in that process is so important. But a lot of it was working with the family too, because there's just such a stigma still around mental health services that we all face, and so it took us a little bit working with parents and developing that relationship even further.
And then too, I heard you say is having them already on the multidisciplinary team can speed it up, because when we have cases, DSS in some situations are able to say this is medical neglect, and then you can substantiate much quicker, so having them already on the team and not just saying, hey, can you come to a meeting, then you can speed things up somewhat and make things
And
happen.
we try not to do that, but sometimes you have to get them involved when it's a matter of safety and this person's life in their hands. This person was making a threat to themselves and others, and had really targeted an individual. And through uncovering it, through all of our work together, there was a lot of underlying things that were going on with this particular person that just, they needed a lot of support.
I appreciate you providing that example. It helped put context into the presentation. I appreciate it as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You guys had great success in Guilford. Excuse me, with us, and I think it's a very good success. I like what the House bill's going to do. As Doctor said, often the family's in a process. Most often, therefore, the child's in a process, and that's a very volatile combination. And that's where my guys are seeing in our schools is when they pull that child to the side, that there's a lot of underlying reason why that child's acting like they are, whether male, female, no matter what race they may be. But usually it starts in the home and not getting the support, the care they need, not getting the love they need. And so one thing we force with our SROs is you got to show these kids you care about them first. Number one, then they'll kind of turn the volume up and listen to you, and they'll be willing to absorb what information you want to show. But if you don't show them you care, they'll turn you off. And the families, they definitely will. And so we're seeing that a lot is the families in a crisis, especially during COVID. And so therefore that child's in the process. So we got to address both. But I think you guys are doing a great job. We're seeing the positive results of it in Guilford, Greensboro, and Alcorn area. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I know you already have a lot of people on your team, but sometimes the at-risk coordinator, they see these kids come in there daily when they're in school suspension. They know their triggers. Sometimes that's a good contact person that can cut back on how long it takes you, because before a child will actually show you triggers, they've got to trust you. And that at-risk coordinator sees these students all the time. That person would be great to serve on a team.
And I think, not to jump ahead of a conversation, but you said, what other things can we do? I just evaluated a student actually this week where you would never guess this kid is in the emotional situation that they're in. And it's really often the quiet individuals, because, you know, on the news, we always say, well, you hear people say, well, I never dreamed this person would do X, Y, or Z, right? That's usually what ends up happening. But it doesn't happen just all of a sudden, right? It is like, I love your quote about they decide, right? It is a decision process as you get there. So I think on the front end, one of the things I had given him like a self-report to kind of engage and like fill out some things, which is a really great way to, that's not intimidating, to kind of get what's going on internally with our kids. Because as we all know, ever since 2020, kids are dealing with more internalizing issues now more than ever. And this child was, you know, referred for a learning disability, right? But there's way more going on than that emotionally. And so I think on the front end that we can get on that, which is kind of in your full continuum of mental health services, that social emotional piece, what are we doing to understand our kids on the front end so that we can give them supports on the front end so we don't get to this place on the back end?
And that's what I was echoing. We really need more workers in the schools because I'm part-time, but that's all I do is social and emotional.
That's right.
And those kids can't start their day without that.
That's right.
And when you pull in another person that has a role away from their job, then you falling short on what their responsibilities are. Until we can meet their needs, they're not thinking about education, and that's what I was saying too. Is that we really need more staff.
And yeah, that's a really blessing, I think, that came out of a lot of funding that happened during COVID, was that we're able to increase specialized instructional support personnel, school psych, social workers, counselors, at-risk individuals, you know, whoever we want to talk about, but we were able to do that. So now we're at the point in the state, like, we got to sustain that, you know, because it has to be a partnership and it has to be something that you put in place to get that prevention in place.
If you can give them those forms to fill out for self-inventory all day, but if they think it's gonna remove them out of the home, they're not gonna tell you anything.
Right.
So it has to be someone that has direct contact with them.
And has a relationship
Yes,
with
and
them.
has a relationship. They're not gonna tell you what you wanna hear on the phone most times. You know.
Well, I'm looking at it as a statewide issue, our issues are really bigger than sustaining it. Yes, we do need to sustain additional hires, but we're still way out of the range.
We are.
We are. School counselors,
Yes,
social workers especially, that's the most out of
yes, sir.
ratio. Psychologists, people misinterpret what they do because they spend most of their time with the exceptional children. And
Yes.
some people don't realize that. Of course, and then we've got school nurses who can also be of assistance in some of this work, but I think the estimate would be for us to be consistent with national ratios would cost like $1 billion a year.
Yes,
Today.
yes.
And we've not been able to make inroads on that, and that number will be getting larger. 700 million 4 years ago, and now it's much higher.
I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Duncan. It's so true. It's very true.
That's your social and emotional network.
Mhm.
That's right. And then, of course, the pressure on those people
Yeah.
enhanced. Thanks to the pandemic.
It allows the teachers to do their job because so many of the teachers, because of lack of supportive services, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to calm little Johnny down before they can go in and do their instructional time. And if we can alleviate that from them, then you're gonna get more better academic success. You know, it all works together for the good. That's a great report.
Great discussion, and I know we've been recommending that we get into the national ratios. This body has.
Yes.
For
We need to.
many years, and so we've made progress, like you said, during the pandemic. The problem is going to be sustaining that also. I mean,
We're at a funding cliff and another, we're approaching a funding cliff. The state board has been advocating also for many years. So there are certainly a lot of advocacy out there, but to this point, and there's been some things done. We're a long way. Some counties have more than others. There's actually great differences or inequities in what different counties have around the state for a variety of different reasons, including funding.
And many, like you said, many areas are so impacted in different ways, depending on their local makeup. That's exactly right.
Right, so, thank y'all for that good discussion, and, so what we're gonna do is, the subcommittee, portion, as I said, we're gonna send out information to each of you, and if there's one of those areas that you're really interested in, being part of one of the subcommittees, please let us know. And we'll get you assigned to one of those subcommittees. We wanna make additional recommendations for the upcoming, year, that are, things that are in the action plan that we still want to try to push forward. So helping us think through what those things are. We have been very successful in some of the items that we've been pushing for finally, with the threat assessment team was one that this body has been pushing for many years. And so really excited about seeing that finally come to fruition. But thinking through what our next steps need to be and getting those ideas together. So our plan is, again, we've got a date on the calendar coming up in September. We'll get that information out to you, but we'll also probably will tie that to the School Safety Summit and try to have those events kind of coincide, and so that you won't have to go to two different meetings. But be thinking about your input. We'll get a copy of the School Safety Action Plan to you all so that you can start thinking about ideas that you would like to provide input on, and then any of those subcommittees that you're interested in serving on. So are there any new business or questions before we adjourn for the day?
I just think this was a great meeting. I think we really accomplished a lot with the small group that we had. And I think that we touched on some things that's really a big issue. So I think it was a great meeting.
I did have one question. We had, for subcommittee number 5, we had talked about, I don't know if some of you will remember this when we brought Melissa Reeves and we talked about the prepare training.
Yeah.
I wanted to just kind of follow, make sure I understood our next steps with that. I know we've got new members, and for those who are new, it was a curriculum, and I actually helped Corliss do it in Wake County. We've been doing it in several different counties, but it's called the Prepare Crisis Curriculum. And it's in response to when there's any type of crisis, whether there is a weather-related incident, God forbid a school shooting incident, whatever kind of crisis it is, it's how to come in and then provide crisis response to the students. And so it's an excellent resource, and I would love to maybe see if we could bring that back, kind of update it, share the cost of everything. And then if that's something we could incorporate in our action plan, and that would be a wonderful partnership, maybe even through Samarkand, where we could offer some training through that. I'm a trainer for it. We've got several trainers in the state for it, but there's no way you can go and do all the LEAs by yourself. It'd be wonderful to have it in partnership with the center or whoever, where we could do that. And then school districts can push in and get that training and go back and share it with their districts to kind of, develop that resource. Because it's an area that a lot of school districts really need support in, so.
And I know we talked about it, I think it's probably been a couple of years ago now, but maybe at the next meeting, we can have that on the agenda just to give us a quick overview of it again.
Yes.
That way we can think about how we can add it into that.
We did it when we were in virtual, and
Right.
then we had it was 2 meetings ago or something, but it's been a while. It's been a little while. That'd be great.
Anything else as far as new business or? Well, thank y'all so much for coming today. We appreciate you and appreciate you volunteering your time to be part of this task force. And we will send out information about the next meeting and the School Safety Summit that's coming up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.